Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars video. This is going to be my review for the Book of Boba Fett Chapter 4. And yeah, this I thought was another good episode. I'd probably say this is the best that we've seen so far, because the flashbacks, which have been the best part of the show so far, continued here and I think more or less finished. And were really good start to finish. This one mainly focused on how Boba kind of gets Fennec Shand on his side and just explaining that whole situation. But when we went back to the present day stuff, it felt like okay, they're ready to go on the main plot now and properly bring it into play. He's having a meeting with the other main powers in his territory, and we're setting the stage ahead of this conflict with the Pikes. And I think if there's anything that this episode really did, it was that it made you really believe that, one, Boba and his connection to the Tuskens is a huge thing for him, and it has changed him. And him wanting to take revenge on, those who killed them is, something that he wants to do. But it's also, I think, maybe planting the seeds that I think the Pikes are probably, secretly behind what happened to the Tuskens as well. Because I think you have to add a little bit of extra onto that dynamic to just create the best possible, enemy for Boba going into the final few episodes here. I think they'll do something like that. Otherwise, the Pikes maybe feel a little underwhelming at the moment. But I just think start to finish, this episode had a lot of really strong scenes. So I suppose that, going through, we see Boba sort of on his own. He has a bantha. I liked a lot of those scenes that they kind of characterize or fleshed out more on the bantha in this episode, just through little scenes where you get to, see the personality of the animal come out a little bit, whereas they'd always just been sort of background animals before. And even in previous episodes of this show, they just basically existed to be big things in the background that got shot from a distance. But Boba's bantha, you have to see that, oh, cool, he cares for this animal. He wanted to have a good life. You can see that they're kind of loving animals as well. That was good world building, which is one of the best things that this show has been doing. But more or less, that sort of catches us up with the Mandalorian stuff, and he goes down to find, the dying Fennec Shand. And I like the explanation on this, because you had to do this. This is the duo going into this show. You had to explain how they met and kind of came to be in this partnership. So he finds her, she's dying. He brings her to basically one of these, what does he call it, a mod parlor. And this is how she gets, fixed. This is how she gets turned into part cyborg. So I think this also retroactively helps to explain why when he saw the street gang in the previous episodes, why he actually wasn't immediately sort of at odds with them is because he's, I suppose, had relatively good dealings with their kind before. They saved Fennec, and so that explains why they're kind of very easy to get on as allies ultimately, because they've helped him before. Now, of course, he has to pay for the services here, but I thought it was a pretty cool scene to just get across that, she was dying. Like, the amount of damage that shot did, she, of course, we know, had to effectively get a robotic, stomach and torso effectively. And I like that they spend some time on that, showing the guy doing all the work and so on. So that all kind of, to me, came together nicely in terms of, okay, there's the explanation. But then you have to get into character-wise, do these two know each other and so on. And I like that. He eventually makes it clear that, oh, you're the assassin Fennec Shand. And when he reveals that he's Boba Fett, she's like, no, Boba Fett's dead. You're not him. But eventually he manages to convince her of that and explain his story. And I think probably the best thing about this part of the flashback was that they finally had Boba, talking to someone who could actually kind of emote with him. And so we were finally able to get sort of his kind of motivations revealed to us. Just him revealing out loud his thoughts on the death of the Tuscans, the importance of being found and basically being reborn, I suppose, as part of the tribe, was so important, because I feel like for people who have been struggling with the show a little bit of like, what's it really about? Well, why is this significant? I think it's just been because it's been maybe a little bit difficult to find what the character arc is in terms of who's Boba before this and who has Boba changed into, but finding out that no, he was the bounty hunter guy before. That's why Darth Vader says stuff like, no disintegrations to him. He was going down that path, and now after this experience with the Tuscans and how he was able to get on with them, they incorporated him into their tribe. They showed him sort of kindness that maybe he hasn't experienced necessarily before. He realizes he wants to do things in a different way, and he also says that he you get the sense he blames himself for the death of the tribe because he feels like he got them involved in this stuff, and so he got them killed. So it's sort of making amends for that, and like he says, kind of being part of a tribe is important. He's that I think is what he's trying to do here with bringing Fennec Shand on. She eventually stays on board because she, I suppose, likes what he's about, likes his ideals. It seems like Chrysanthemum is roughly on his side now, and you're beginning to see the shift away from he's being really, really naive into no, his approach is starting to show some reward for him, in that he talks to the other leaders back in the present, and he'd like to form a defensive partnership with them, but of course they're all out for themselves. He acknowledges that that's the way things are here, but he eventually manages to get them to all agree to the idea of, at the very least, I would appreciate it if you remained neutral, as in, don't join the Pikes if they ask you to. Don't join me, that sort of thing. So, he ends up, I suppose, getting a little bit of respect for that, because this is an example of sort of, I suppose, a deal that would never really maybe have been made before with previous people in charge, but there they've made one quite reasonably, and Boba's like, you don't have to pay me tribute or anything like that, I'll defend it myself, and then at the very end you get the tease of like, oh, we're gonna have to basically buy in, so pay to get some muscle in, and they play the Mandalorian theme, and I think what they're teasing is that we're going to see the Mandalorian Din probably join in. I think this was rumored that he would appear at some point in the series. It's going to be interesting to see how this all works out necessarily, because we don't really know the scope of like Mandalorian season 4. Like, I think the obvious thing is that it's going to be Mandalore focused. So if he makes an appearance, there's a bit to explain depending on like what situation happens, what has happened, and so on. Yeah, that worked really well. The main mission Fennec and Boba go on in the flashback is to get Boba's ship back. Now, obviously, most people know it as the Slave One. They don't seem to want to call it that anymore, so it's the fire something gunship. Like it was weird to. I'm still getting used to the name because I'm so used to calling it the Slave One. But fire spray gunship, I think that's what it is. So the fire spray, I guess. And he also mentions multiple times in the episode about wanting to get his armor back, but we saw that already, so you don't really need to show that, I guess, because the flashback really did catch you up. I think that was very significant with just the way they did that within the episode, of showing you the end credit scene from The Mandalorian season 2, catching us up with that. He's got the armor back when they show that again, him killing Bib. And then he comes out of the Bacta pod and it's revealed you are now fully healed. Confirming to us that we have not seen Boba at 100% so far in the flashbacks or at any point in the present day story. He is now 100%, and you don't really know how good or not he is. So that's the kind of interesting tease going into this that they need to deliver now, going into the action, is that him, his new squad, potentially bringing some known characters back into play. They need to put on a bit of a show to show that Boba Fett is incredibly strong still. So that's going to be something that's pretty exciting. That just to know that all the fights that he's had up to now, he hasn't been at full strength. He's been either ambushed or halted in the middle of his recovery and all this sort of stuff. But now we're getting somewhere. I thought the action sequence of them getting the ship back was I thought pretty well done. I like that they showed sort of Fennec, because Boba still has a lot of the Tusken stuff. He hasn't got his equipment back, so he's going in pretty low tech, whereas Fennec actually has most of her equipment and does things in the way that she usually does. And so you have the sort of spy drone go in, scope the place out. I like that they use the weirdness with the way the Slave One, the fire spray, is orientated, and that Fennec seemed very, very annoyed at just the way that the ship works. That while it's like in its landing mode, you're sitting like facing the ceiling, and a lot of the buttons are like in really awkward positions, especially if it's in the wrong position, and it's just getting across that she prefers to just like take off the harness and have to like crawl over to get to the right buttons and so on. That was an interesting one. I'm surprised that they didn't even have like a line of dialogue getting across that, like, do you not find the ship really awkward and stuff like that. They also got across that, like, because it was flying in a very relatively contained area, there's not a lot that could be done. So consistently they showed Fennec Shand as being super, super skilled. She is more or less 100%. We're going to get to Boba at that level as well. And then the second he has the ship back, he takes care of business. He gets revenge on the Nikto speeder bike gang, just absolutely annihilates them. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I have a feeling that the Pikes are maybe a bit more involved in this than we think, just to create a bit more of a dynamic with them. But we'll see if him killing the speeder bike gang was the end of his sort of revenge for the Tuskens or not. But that, I suppose, leads us into the Sarlacc scene. How am I forgetting the Sarlacc scene? He goes looking for his armor there because I suppose he was unconscious when he sort of crawled out, and we saw, of course, we know the Jawas took it, and we know kind of the how to trace where the armor is, but he feels that it's still in the Sarlacc, and it was a bit weird, like he just is slowly flying the ship in just to have a look down. That was maybe a little bit awkward to just, is he hoping just to see it like right there at the front? Not necessarily, but it created a cool situation where the Sarlacc grabs the ship, and after a big struggle, Fennec Shand drops the sonic charge into its mouth, and that's what I suppose kills the Sarlacc. Such a cool, memorable sound effect and weapon. Nice to see it get a big kind of kill here on the Sarlacc. And then they quickly get across that, like, Boba goes into the remains of the Sarlacc to search for his armor and just can't find it. And after that, they're pretty much like, okay, you now know exactly how this happens. He happens to come across the guy from the first episode of Season 2, and his appearances in The Mandalorian Season 2 highlight how he gets the armor back. Beyond that, it's the Bib Fortuna scene. That's really it, because he explains his motivation to Fennec about why he wants to take over Tatooine and rule it in a correct way. That because of the Tuskens, that's why he sort of has any sort of like attachment at all to Tatooine. And I maybe wish that they'd make that like a little clearer, that he'd say something like that. But I guess he maybe can't publicly say that to anyone except the people he super trusts, like Fennec. that, you know, his ideals effectively are informed in part by the Tuscans. That would probably not go down overly well, but we as the audience at least know that he found a certain honor to the Tuscans, and that's what he's, you know, trying to do. In terms of the other present day scenes, he's fully healed. We have the scene with Chrysanthemum actually at the kind of bar, the cantina, whatever you want to call it. I thought that was quite interesting in that he's obviously frustrated after what happened from before, but then he's sitting in the same room as a bunch of Trandoshans, and if you know your Star Wars lore, you know that the two species feud with each other because the Trandoshans are mainly like hunters and they tend to hunt Wookiees, and so because of that, Wookiees hate Trandoshans, and because he's a bounty hunting Wookiee, he attacks the Trandoshans. I did like the scene where the owner, I guess, of the cantina tries to calm him down and like really get across that, you know, you're the best gladiator ever. You don't need to do this. If you don't, you know, rip him apart, your debt will be paid. But he still just rips the guy's arm off and pays his debt in full. So, you know, very cool scene from him. And after this, you know, Boba watches all of this. He walks in like to get some information, but just witnesses Chrysanthemum doing this and follows him out and is like, I've got a job for you, to basically act as bodyguard during the meeting. And I'm guessing he's just on Boba's side at this point, from this point out, because he didn't really like do much so far. Like we haven't seen what has really happened. So I'm guessing just part of it is that join me on this mission. This is a job for you, and they have a certain level of respect because of that. Other than that, it's the scene at the meeting between the sort of main powers in the area. Again, just I like that they're presenting the sort of reasonable ruler Boba of saying like, I'm not after your territories. I don't expect you to basically give any quarter because I won't either. But we need to have some sort of an alliance because the Pikes are coming in and they are taking everything out of the planet, all the wealth, and we know we don't want that to happen. That our mutual enemy is them. You may not want to ally with me, but don't ally with them. So it's hard to see exactly, I suppose, what way this fight is going to go down, because the Pikes as a species don't come across as being like particularly, you know, threatening as such. They're powerful, I guess, because they have large numbers, and I guess they have lots of technology, but they haven't presented that to us all that well just yet. Again, if they reveal that they maybe have some sort of an alliance with the speeder bike gang, that could present something interesting. The main thing they seem to be going for is just literally numbers. That because Boba is going to have to defend this on his own, it's basically him and all of the allies he's developed here, plus some reinforcements that are going to be, I suppose, really hype moments in upcoming episodes. But that's, I think, everything from the episode. Like, there's a little scene where like he has the Rancor under the table that they're all eating with. That's the thing that immediately, you know, the one part of the episode that maybe runs the risk of like Boba being not respected by the others. He gets it back by revealing that, hey, I have a Rancor now as well. Like I could drop this whole table into my Rancor pit if you wanted to, but I haven't. And just him showing that he has control over the Rancor, that's a good sort of power move from him. But yeah, it's one of those ones where like the show could kind of start to finish has not blown me away, but I still think it's quite good. It's still, you know, really strong Star Wars in comparison to some of the other stuff we've got recently, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I still, like I've mentioned in other reviews, like I'm wondering a bit, where exactly are we going in terms of when we end this season? Why is Boba going to be significant? Is he going to be just the ruler of Tatooine? Tatooine is now maybe a power rather than just a backwater planet in the system, and he's going to be a notable leader and maybe have bigger plans, or what? Because I like the whole approach of him getting out of the bounty hunter lifestyle, and I liked some of the discussions that he had with Fennec in this episode about that, of wanting more control, doing things the right way. But when we get to the end of the season and he is in control, where does that go? Where does that lead to? What does that mean? That's what I'm really, really wondering. So yeah, really good stuff. Continues to be a strong show. But in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the episode. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.